Why do sharks go into feeding frenzies? A case study of a recent, unusual attack on a human looks for answers. After multiple dusky sharks killed a swimmer off Israel's coast this year, scientists investigated what might have triggered the attack in hopes of preventing similar incidents. Close-up of a dusky shark. A dusky shark swims in the Mediterranean Sea off the coast of Hadera, Israel, where dusky sharks and sandbar sharks tend to gather. Photostock Israel/Science Photo Library via Getty Images. Joshua Rapplearn. Joshua Rapplearn, contributing writer. October 14, 2025. Get our newsletter. Shark attacks on swimmers are incredibly rare, averaging only around 64 each year. And in the grand recorded history of these events, dusky shark attacks on humans are virtually unheard of. But that changed in April, when a man snorkeling off the coast of Hadera in northern Israel was killed in a dusky shark feeding frenzy at least 100 meters from the beach. They consumed the body. Apparently they only found clothes of the guy, says Eric Klua, a marine biologist who studies shark behavior at Paris Sciences et Lettres University's Practical School of Advanced Studies. In some ways, the attack left researchers and the public alike scratching their heads. While species like tiger sharks, bull sharks, great whites and, to a lesser extent, oceanic whitetips and makos occasionally kill humans, dusky sharks are not regarded as being deadly. In fact, the Global Shark Attack File kept by the nonprofit Shark Research Institute records no other fatal incidents related to dusky sharks, aside from the recent attack in Israel. Did you know? Dusky sharks. The dusky shark is known for its lengthy seasonal migrations to warmer, equatorial waters in winter and cooler waters closer to the poles in summer. It is considered an endangered species globally. Feeding frenzies occur when predators are suddenly faced with a large amount of prey or get overexcited by a food source, leading to frantic and aggressive behavior. While most commonly seen with sharks and piranha swarming prey, these events can take other forms. Sometimes, a group of sharks will go into a frenzy tearing apart a floating whale carcass. Sharks, dolphins, whales, larger fish or even some seabirds might continuously attack a densely packed school of small fish. The carnivores bite to get a bite before the food is gone. That could mean it's entirely consumed, the school of fish disperses or the carcass sinks to the ocean floor, settling at depths that some predators prefer to avoid. In all these cases, the food has an expiration date, prompting competition. Now, after reviewing online witness interviews and videos of the attack in Israel, Klua and his colleague Christian Parton, a marine biologist and shark scientist at the University of Exeter in England, suggest they understand why this rare feeding frenzy occurred with a human. A better understanding of the conditions that trigger feeding frenzies might help illuminate how similar incidents could be avoided in the future. From details Klua and Parton gathered about the case and published in a study in August in Ethology, it seems like the 40-year-old victim was swimming alone off the coast when he was attacked. Dusky sharks and sandbar sharks tend to gather in the area, which has abnormally warm water due to the outflow from a nearby power plant. Witnesses heard the man shout, "They're biting me," and saw shark fins above the surface. The man disappeared, and the water quickly turned red. Analysis of the shape of the fins on the videos taken by witnesses revealed they belonged to dusky sharks. By the videos, it was clear that at least 2 individuals were involved, but the likelihood is there were many more sharks underwater finishing the job, Klua says. Once one shark is excited, it stimulates other sharks to be excited as well, says Stephen Kajura, a marine biologist specializing in sharks at Florida Atlantic University, who was not involved in Klua's study. He says that group reactions are common in sharks, whether that means homing in on food sources or taking flight, as blacktip sharks do when predatory hammerheads appear. Still, researchers have had a hard time figuring out exactly what happened in April due to the lack of other videos. The ones taken from witnesses don't show much. To understand the incident, Klua and Parton separated into 2 distinct phases. The first involves the question of why a shark bit in the first place. The man reportedly had a GoPro camera, which holds a clue, Klua says. Video cameras emit an electromagnetic signal, the same type that sharks use to home in on prey in the water. Muscle movements made by animals generate weak electrical currents, which sharks can detect thanks to sensory organs near the mouth, open pores called ampullae of Lorenzini, filled with a type of jelly that conducts electricity. A shark could only detect a camera's electromagnetic signal at very close range, within about 3 feet, Klua says. The pulse might have attracted a shark if one used to getting food from humans had already approached the swimmer. This familiarity with humans can come from sharks stealing catches from spearfishers, a habit the predators can build, or through direct feeding. In Hadera, this often involves people feeding meat to sharks from the beach or while standing in shallow water, passing it right from hand to mouth. A freediver swims among sandbar sharks off the coast of Hadera, Israel, in December 2022. Sandbar sharks and dusky sharks tend to gather in the area, where a swimmer was killed by dusky sharks this year. Jack Wes/AFP via Getty Images. Klua notes this can lead sharks to beg swimmers for food. We can legitimately imagine that sharks around Hadera might do this, having grown accustomed to seeking food from human hands, Klua and Parton write in the paper. The main trigger of the accident is artificial provisioning, what we call shark feeding, Klua says. Hand feeding is very dangerous. Because dusky sharks don't see humans as a meal, the initial bite was likely either exploratory or just clumsiness. Sharks sometimes bump into humans. The first shark may have been trying to bite the camera when it got the man by accident, or it may have just been investigating the signal of the camera, then bumped into the man and bit out of clumsy reflex. While the first bite may have been accidental, all the subsequent bites were likely on purpose, as it sparked the second phase of the incident, the feeding frenzy. Dusky sharks can be large, more than 11 feet long, so even an accidental bite would have drawn a lot of blood. Klua says it's a misconception that blood puts sharks into a frenzy. Even though they do have a good sense of smell, it takes a while for blood to spread through the water. The blood is not very efficient as a stimulus underwater, he says. In any case, other sharks may have been very close by when the man was bitten. Even more important is the sound of the jaws and ripping flesh from the first bite. Sound travels 5 times faster through water than through air, Klua says, and sharks have very good hearing. The sound alone may have attracted other sharks to what they would have interpreted as a food source. Finally, the victim would have been in distress after the first bite, and panic can draw more attacks. In these frenzy situations, Klua says that competition, rather than cooperation, is likely what drives the animals. Aaron Wersing, a wildlife ecologist at the University of Washington who was not involved in the study, says that sharks have wrongfully gotten a bad reputation as mindless killers. In fact, sharks are usually reluctant to attack unfamiliar prey due to the risk of injuring themselves in the process. While not social in the sense of working cooperatively, he describes sharks as sophisticated learners. He agrees with Klua that competition likely triggered this feeding frenzy, though he prefers to describe it as an acceleration in feeding behavior. You are reluctant to go after something unless you see another shark do it, he says. These feeding frenzies arise in part due to social learning. A group of sharks swims off the coast of Hadera, Israel, in 2017. Jack Wes/AFP via Getty Images. Similar frenzies happen across the animal kingdom, but Wersing says they are more common in the water than on land due to the nature of the ocean. As far as humans are concerned, however, shark-related feeding frenzies are incredibly rare in the modern era. One infamous example occurred with the sinking of the USS Indianapolis by Japanese torpedoes during World War II. Dozens of sailors were killed by sharks, probably oceanic white tips, as the crew floated for days before being rescued. The sharks were likely first attracted by all the floating corpses. Despite the often negative press about sharks, attacks on humans are incredibly rare. Dogs, for example, kill 5 times more humans than sharks do in the United States. In fact, in 2024, unprovoked shark attacks worldwide hit a nearly 3-decade low. But Klua worries that these types of attacks may become more common due to the increasing popularity of dangerous feeding practices. Some tour operators have begun hand-feeding meat to tiger sharks while underwater in places like the Bahamas. The sharks, they are clever, they make the link between the feed and feeder, Klua says. They might bite the human because they see the hand as food. Like in Hadera, This feeding practice can increase begging behavior in sharks, bringing them into closer contact with humans. Klua isn't totally against feeding sharks. He says it can be a way to provide positive experiences with sharks that help to diminish exaggerated public fear. But earlier research he conducted shows that hand feeding can result in accidental bites. Feeding is not the problem, it's the way you are feeding, he says. Both Wersing and Kajura agree with the assessment that hand feeding practices should be stopped. Wersing says that people would be unlikely to walk up to a bear or a pride of lions with food in their hand, so why should it be different with large marine predators? These are wild animals, Kajura says. You have to recognize that it's not wise to go and do that.